Hi, I think we're live now. Just gonna set everything up. I've got a new computer. I've got it's a new laptop, and I installed Ubuntu on it. So I'm now not dual boot, no virtual machine, and it's actually going okay. It crashes from time to time. Bluetooth doesn't work. The built-in speaker and microphone doesn't work, but apart from that, it's actually okay. And it's sort of working pretty well. But that did mean that I have to set up, and we had some audio issues. That was actually on my old laptop. So I set up yesterday, and I spent all day yesterday. No, that's not true. I spent 2 hours yesterday trying to get this sound issue working, because it happened again when I went to a new laptop, brand new system. And I tried to swap everything. I tried to swap the cable. And hey, I'm just trying to set this up. So now there's certain windows I don't have. I used to have, but I think I managed to sort out the sound. I'm waiting for people to tell me that the sound is good or the sound is bad or anything. Okay, I don't have the same nice windows that I used to have. But that with the chat, I'm just trying to set everything up, and then we'll get started. Okay. Audio is great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, at the moment. Thanks, Mike. That's real confidence. For the moment, audio is great. It was after 11 goes yesterday, I managed to fix it. Okay, so, all right, I think we have enough confirmation now. Audio is good. I'm very happy about that, because it was a pain trying different cables and stuff. Okay, so let's get started. And I'm just going to gently ease into the workflows. I wanted to focus this on the workflows. This is what I announced for today. And so this is something that I've been working on nonstop for the last almost 2 weeks, week and a half. And we're getting there. We're getting a foundation. We had a release yesterday. I need to write a blog post about this 1.1.0. This is still a development branch release. So this is not stable. These workflows are not going to be, like, the interface is not going to be stable. But there's something there that's a foundation, and I think we're making some progress. Somebody said they tried it, and it was good, and they were able to do stuff with it. So I just want to get gently into this for this office hour today. But if you have questions, feel free to ask, and maybe I can get to them at some point. Okay, so in the beginning, there were just actions, right? So if I have some page, and I want to have some action, then I was able to select one out of these bunch of actions here, right? So if I wanted to, sleep or, send a notification, then you could do an action here. And we've had this for years. And then that worked out pretty well. In the beginning, these actions were supplied by plugins, which meant that we had some flexibility in terms of what we could do, and I could write more plugins. Other people have written plugins, and they could supply functionality. But then there was a limit in terms of what you could do, because what if you had these two great actions and you wanted to do both of them in response to one button click? And we also, of course, there's a different way you can do actions. We have this this trigger system. So you could create a trigger in response to, say, an insert event or a delete event on a table. You could run an action. But what if you wanted to do more than one thing? You could create more than one trigger, but you don't know which one runs first. So then the next evolution came not so long ago. I think it was like half a year ago. We had these multi-step actions, and that really made a huge difference. So in the builder, it looks like, let me go over on the other side if I can. Okay, I can be here. In the builder here, we had you can have a number of steps, and now you can do one action after another. By the way, I want to redo this interface. There's a limitation here in terms of the specification interface. Like, what if I want to swap the two? You can't do that. But there are lots of limitations to this, but it was at the same time a huge improvement, right? So now I can send a notification to the user, a toast, that window that pops up. And I can also, whatever I want, I can insert into a table or whatever, reload the page or, insert into a table, delete rows, whatever. So that was great, right? That really made a difference in terms of the applications you could build. And as always, though, whenever there's a facility, we always try to take it as far as possible. And there were some limits to the multi-step. Later on, we also had multi-step here in the triggers. So if I want to do something in response to an insert, I can have multiple steps here, right? So I can do a web request or whatever I want to do. Let's do something like this. So now, actually, let's swap these because this kind of illustrates some of the limitations as well, right? So I think, by the way, one of you on this podcast, you were asking for, the web, a more extensive web interface. I did that recently. Again, this is on this latest development branch, but now you can change the method and the authorization header. Okay, so now here on the multi-step, you can get a request from somewhere, but you can't really pass that result of this request onto the next step, right? And that's where things are getting a little bit serious when you want to do that, because you're essentially building the building blocks of programs, of automation. And so that was the limitation. Now there were some workarounds you could do it, and we had all sorts of stuff we could do. Like there's this flow control. There's a flow control step somewhere. I didn't order the step control flow, so you could actually go to a step. So you could create little loops here, but you couldn't pass information between them, and then you had to write that to a table. And at the end of the day, what I ended up doing for most things was writing code instead, right? So most of when I work with people who do Saltcorn, we ended up writing code here. Because, I know how to write code, and this is flexible. You can do what you want to. So that was the serious solution. So if you wanted some really serious programming, then you could do the you'd have to write code here, which is fine, and it gave you an escape vent, and you could still do much of the stuff in Saltcorn in terms of building the user interface. And then when you wanted something very complicated, you could write some code. Of course, we're trying to be a no-code tool, right? So we're kind of letting down on that promise. But there are actually different limitations as well that we're also now overcoming. With the code. So one thing you can't really do with the code is just suspend the execution and continue something 24 hours later. You can pause for a couple of seconds, but that doesn't really work well if it's a long time. And if Saltcorn restarts, right? If your process restarts while you're suspended, then it doesn't pick back up again. The other thing you can't do, and it's very difficult in programming in general, is asking questions for the user, right? So let's just pretend I'm writing browser-side code. You kind of can, it's actually quite, when you're writing code for the browser, you can write something like prompt, what is your name? So you can do that, but in general, in programming, that's very difficult. Apart from when you're writing code directly for the browser, is this kind of user interaction. And in Saltcorn, we structure that with, you have to insert into a table, and then you have to point to the right view and stuff like that. So like getting a user involved in these steps is really, really hard. And that's of course tied in with this idea of suspension, right? Because the user may not be there when you're using the when you want to ask them the question. So it has to go to some sort of notification, and then they have to fill it out later. So essentially, you have to learn how to, have to build a system where you can suspend code until the user is ready to answer the question. So those are some limitations with code as well that we're helping to overcome. So I think, in terms of the code, yes, it was flexible, but you needed to code, and there were still limits. And I think, we have another, we'll try something else. And I think this works really well. Okay, so here's the new stuff, right? So now we're introducing workflows. And workflows, it's an old concept, been around for a long time in computing. Workflow engines. Those of you who are coming from no code, you know about the tools already. You know about, what are they called? Zapier. N8N is a not quite open source, but almost open source application. And what else is there? There's like Make. So some engines as well have this built in, right? So I believe that Bubble has a workflow engine built in. I don't actually know whether you can. I've never really tried Bubble, but I don't know if you can sort of ask questions for the user and suspend for 24 hours. But and also the other thing where this is quite common, so there's some fields where this is very common. So for instance, in marketing, very common to have like marketing workflows, where especially when you're doing email campaigns. So you want to send an email, and then 24 hours later, you want to send another email, like a drip. It's called a drip campaign. And the other place where this is very common is in high performance computing. Where you're scheduling jobs across a cluster, and then you've got some big task like modeling the weather, and then you've broken that up into some steps, and then you want those steps to be executed one after another, or maybe in parallel. Ash is saying HubSpot. Yeah, that's an example of the marketing, right, where you do these like drip campaigns and also other stuff, like you can schedule a survey to users and stuff. Okay, so workflows in Saltcorn. I will stop talking and start doing. So you build workflows. Workflows have to be built as a trigger. And you have to select, there is now a new option. So you can get this if you're on saltcorn.com, or if you are running your own instance, if you've upgraded to the next branch, which you can choose from inside Saltcorn. Should I quickly show you how you can get this? Maybe you know already. You can just go to saltcorn.com and try it though. But if you're here, I'm already on this next branch, but if you're here and if you're doing like, you can select the next here, right? This is how you upgrade, and then you get this. Okay, so workflows have to be built here as a trigger. So that also means that they integrate in pages, and they can be chosen like any other trigger. So, and they can run also in response to events like inserts, also API calls, inbound API calls. So, but let's just do a little standalone workflow. So we'll do one that's never, so it's not scheduled, won't be triggered by anything particular, but you can choose it and pair it with a button or something like that. Okay, so let's try, what are we going to do? Ask some questions, workflow, WF. And so workflows never take place in the context of a table. And then you choose workflow, it's the last option here. Let's go here. So you choose a workflow here. Okay, so let's start here. Okay, so look, this interface is incredibly simple, somewhat clunky, and I promise it will get better. Just remember, this is not, this is our very first beta release of the workflows in Saltcorn, and we will make this more intuitive. At the same time, if you've been using Saltcorn, you might feel a little bit at home. Okay, so a workflow has steps. And you start here, we don't have any steps yet. We haven't defined any steps, but you start, the workflow will start here where it says start. And you start by adding some steps. Okay, so this is our first step. It's got this initial step ticked. And then you have some options here where you can skip this based on an expression, and you can also choose the next step, which you should do. We'll get to that in a second. Let's do something simple. By the way, I forgot to say, there will be bugs today. We will run into bugs. I also promise that the vast majority of those will be fixed by the time this makes it into a stable release. Okay, let's just send a notification to the user. That's all our workflow is going to do. Hello from workflow. Oh yeah, that's a bug. I don't know why this happens, but it happens. Okay, for the moment, this step is not connected to the first step. Why is that? Did I untick this one? Okay, now it is our first step. So our workflow will start at start and it will go into step 1. Okay, how can we run this? 3 different ways of running this. We can do a test run here. Oh, I fixed that bug. See, I told you there would be bugs. Okay, let's do, this is annoying. So let's not make it a toast. Let's make it the output, because that works. Yeah, I saw a lot of these bugs this morning. Let's do the run. Okay, so here we go. That was the output that I specified, and it came into a pop-up. Okay, that's way number 1 of running this. I have a feeling this isn't going to work, but let's try it anyways. Okay, let's choose. So if I reload this, I should be able to choose my workflow. Okay, let's look at this page. Yeah, okay, so then I'm running the workflow here. All right, so let's go back, and there's a third way of running the workflows that I will get to at the end. There we go. Okay, so let's add another step. Actually, let's turn this in. Like we said, we're gonna ask some questions. So let's do that. So we're gonna. Oops, sorry. Okay, so the user form step. So, okay, so when you're configuring the workflow, here's the basic configuration of the step. That's the same for everyone. It's just the name of the step and essentially the next step. Those are the 2 important ones. Then you have to choose an action, and then you're configuring that action. Some of those actions are new, and they're specific to workflow actions. So these are available if you're running workflows only. And some of these are the ones that you're used to: delete rows, modify row, insert row, stuff like that. So let's now change this to a user form. And now I can ask some questions. Some questions. And I am going to ask, what is your name? And so, okay, so now I have to tell you about the context. Okay, so these steps are executed within a context. They have a set of values known by a key that are designated by a variable name, and that the workflow steps can read from and write to. All right, so in this case, we're going to ask some questions, and those answers will be written into the context. This may take some time getting used to, but it's not, I did not make this up. This is a common way of building workflow systems. So we're going to ask what the name is, and then we're going to write it to a variable in the context called name. So that means that when this step is done, oh, and I also choose the input type, and that will be free text. So I set the variable to name, and when this step is done, it will write to the context the variable name with the answer to this question. And we'll do another one. How old are you? And that will be, we'll call that age, and that will be an integer. Okay, and then I'm going to use that. So I'll do another step that is an output. And now I will read from the context. And I'm going to read the name. And here I'm using interpolations, like it says here, to access the context. So the name here is the variable name in the context, and I'm using it in this step, so I'm reading from it. And I'll do something nicer where there's like a plus down here, and then when you create the step, so you don't have to link them, but for the moment you have to specifically link them. So you just do step 2. All right, so now we have a workflow here. Should we try and run it? Okay, so it's asking me some questions. What is your name? Tom. How old am I? I think I'm 47 or something like that. And it says, hello, Tom. It's great. So I had a workflow. It was suspended until I could answer that question. And then I answered it. Now, what happens if I'm not... Okay, so this way of running it by pressing test run. That is, of course, something I can only do as an administrator, right? Oh, this was not the right one. But if I do it, I can do it here as the user. Tom 47. And then it's giving me the output again. Now that was for the user, and then we have one more way of running them. Now, what we have here is, okay, so I want to just talk a little bit more about the interface for the administrator. And the administrator has this list of runs. So these are the historical runs. And I can see here, I can go in and see at the end what is the context at the end here. This is at the end of the execution, or it's the currently running workflow, right? So if I do a test run here, but now I'm in the middle of this run. I can see here that here's a run of the workflow, and it's waiting, and I get a link here to fill it in if I want to. But I can go in here, and it says, okay, what are we doing? We're waiting for form, and it will go into that step. Where does it say the step? It doesn't actually say the step here in the list. I just had it on the previous page. No, it doesn't actually say. I should say what step I'm at. That's key. And you can see it's not filled, but if I fill it, let's come up with a more youthful person here. Then now this is filled. Okay, so now there's a key facility as you're debugging these that I'm actually very happy with. If I go back to this definition, I have this tick box here called save step traces for each run. And now if I run it, let's do that. Okay, now in my workflow runs, that must be this one, I have saved the state of the workflow run after every step. And what that means is that you can see what the context is at the end of this. So here at the end of, this is actually at the end of step 1, but the step hasn't completed. I may have to think a little bit about the semantics here. At the end of step 1, we haven't filled in the form, but the step has been there and it's queued up the response, but I guess it hasn't completed, so maybe it shouldn't quite be like this. And here at the end of step 2, that was an output step, you can see the context here. So I think this is really important when you're debugging these workflows and you're sitting there and trying to figure out what's going on internally in this workflow, is that you can just run it and you can see what happened at each step here, right? And you can sort of see what the context is, and because you're going to use these context variables and you're going to refer to them in the subsequent workflows. So it's a bit like having a debugger, right? So you can see the value of each variable at the end of each line. Okay, I have a couple of things I want to cover here. One is why are we doing this so much, and why are other people working on this as well at the same time? And that's one thing. And I want to talk about why this third way of doing this. So there's a resurgence in interest in these workflows. So that has been because of this no-code movement, and it was all good, the good old zaps and all that. But now with AI agents, this is coming back even more so. And a lot of platforms are realizing that AI agents really are just workflows. And they do some of those same, they are really just small workflows with information flowing between them. On top of that, if you add the ability to add the human in the loop with the AI, so you have an AI agent where you can suspend execution of the agent and you can ask a question of the user. You can ask them maybe to provide some more information, to make a decision, or you can ask them to approve some items for relevancy. Then this becomes incredibly powerful, right? So human in the loop AI agents is something that could be really important and could get around some of the issues with AI agents, such as hallucinations, and just give you some more checks, and also just mean that humans and AI can work together on decision making. So that's certainly one of the reasons why I have become interested in AI in workflows and have started working on this. And look, we've been working on a number of RAG. RAG stands for Retrieval-augmented generation. Working on a number of prototypes in Saltcorn, some of them for clients that have paid for them. And they ended up being a lot of code that people would write. I would have to write a lot of code in Saltcorn. So we have these. We have these. We have these code pages here, right? And so I typically have something called RAG. And look, it would be a lot of code to get a RAG system going. But now with the workflows, we can do this with absolutely no code. We can build a RAG system. I don't know if I'll have time to do it. If I don't, I can just show you one, because do I have one here? I think I have a RAG system. Let me just logging in a different browser. Do I have a RAG system I can show you? Sort of. Yeah, I have one I might be able to show you. It's here. I'll show you that later. So this is why. So partly, workflows are a really nice way of doing these systems. So in a way, so that you have composable steps. That's one way, and then that's one reason why we're super interested in workflows right now, and why it's really timely now with the AI agent revolution that's happening, and secondly, because of the possibility of having human in the loop AI agents. Okay, we have a question here, and it is about workflows, so I will answer it. Can the context of workflows be retrieved at a later time, so when the user fills a form, that information can go to a queue and later on it gets retrieved for some intensive logic, for example? Yes, absolutely. Let's say, okay, let's have some fun. Okay, so I'm going to show, okay, I'll do a conditional. Okay, so we've asked, right, how old is the user, right? And we asked what's the name. I did this before. So let me do this again. So, okay. So now I'm going to output. I hope this is going to work. Okay, so now we're going to do, from the output, I'm going to do 2 steps. I'm just doing, Roderick, I'm doing a very simple demonstration of what you're asking for. There are other ways we can do that. That workflow, we can push it to a database table, right? So we can, I can insert any row here. Then I can choose a table and I can just like push variables from the context. It so happens to be this table has a name, I don't even have to write those, right? So now I can insert variables from the context into a database table. That's one way of answering your question. But I'm going to do, and then you can go off and start another workflow or whatever you're doing, right? But I want to show you something else here, because this step here, this next step, can be a, it's not just a name of a step, it can also be an expression. In fact, it is an expression where these names of steps in your workflow are in scope. You can access them. So I'm going to do like, let's do a step old. Okay, so if this, I'll say if this is old, then I'm gonna write an output. This is like how my kids are thinking. Okay, so I'm gonna say you are old, and I'll say step young. Wow. I just want to say I don't endorse this ageism at all, but this is just, as I said, how my kids are thinking. So, so here, if the age is greater than 25, then we will go to step old. And otherwise, what did I call this? I forget what I called it. Did I call it step young? Yeah, I did call it step young. Okay, so I'm going to ask for the person's age. I'm going to say hello. And then if they're over 25, I'm going to say that they're old. And if they're under 25, they will get this step. Tom, 27, okay. You're old, yeah, because I'm over 25, right? So this is kind of one way of doing, Roderick, what you asked for, right? So you can have conditional logic in the control flow. Yeah, you can see this as well, right? So we went to step old. You can have conditional logic in the control flow like this. So that's one way you can do it. So I'd say the answer to the question is that's one way. The other way is insert it into a database. And you can now do things with the context. I was talking about AI, wasn't I? Okay, so now the last way of interacting with workflows that we currently have gives you something that is like a chatbot interface. And so can you start one flow from another flow? Not sure, but you will be able to. Should we try it? I don't think it will carry over in quite the way it is right now. That is definitely a goal. I'm just going to make a note of that. Yeah, that is definitely a goal, Mike, to be able to start one workflow from another workflow, because that allows you to get some decomposition. I don't actually think you can even pick your other triggers. Yeah, the answer is no, you can't currently do that, but that is a goal. Yes, Roderick. I'm guessing maybe just trigger an action that is the other flow, but that's where you can't pick them right now. You can't pick the other triggers. That is definitely on the roadmap and will be there long before 1.2 is released. Does the context of workflow 1 go to workflow 2? Yeah, we have to decide about that. Let me just, you raise an interesting point. So that I just want to talk about here. So if you are on a page, not a page, but if you are on triggering a workflow from either a list or a show view or some kind of context of a database row, then the initial context is set. That works right now. That is set to that row's fields, right? So the initial context then, if you're triggered from a row, also if you're triggered from an insert action, then the context will be the variables that are in that row. So that's that allows you to do some processing using workflows on specific database rows. I don't quite know if you're starting a context of one workflow to another, should the context go to the other workflow? That's a good question. I think we need to think about that. You definitely need some way to control that. There's also just, I actually had a lunch today and with someone who knows workflows really well, and we talked about this. I think we need some way of also running actions with a sub workflow, sub context. So you cannot see the entire context, but you can see a specific part of it. Okay. Right, so we were on talking about the AI steps. Okay, so we were talking about the new view type. Okay, so there's a new view pattern. This is in core. You don't need a module for this. It's called a workflow room. And it allows you to interact with a workflow in a chatbot-like interface. It doesn't look that great right now. That is coming, I promise. Okay, so now here I am asking questions. I see my previous runs. All of those. Doesn't really show the output. I don't know what that is. All right, let's pretend I'm 18. Okay, so here I am now able to have a conversation with a workflow. Any user form steps will show up here, and any output will also show up here. Okay, so this means that, so let's go wild now. Let's first of all build a small ChatGPT interface. I think I'll do that now, and then I'll briefly show you the RAG that I built before. Okay, chat, is it GPT? Yeah, it's GPT. Let's do never again. Where's never? Never's there. Okay, we're building a new workflow. Okay. First, we're going to ask a question. Okay. So I'm putting into queue. I'm asking, what is your question? I'm putting it into queue, the variable queue. Let's not do that. It's bad form to do like really short ones. We're putting into the variable question. And then I'm going to answer that question. Now I have installed the large language model, not here, large language model plugin here, the module, and that gives me certain new actions here. This is all stuff that I worked on recently. So we have an LLM generate. LLM generate. And now I'm going to ask the question. So I'm just going to ask that directly to ChatGPT. Question. So now I'm asking the LLM the question that the user answered. And I'll put this in variable answer. And I also put, I want this chat history. So I figured this out a couple of days. I've been building too many chat systems that didn't really have a history that you could converse on. And I figured that, okay, we'll just designate a variable, and that variable will be where the LLM generate will store its conversational history. So we'll call this chat. And that worked pretty well, actually. So let's call this something else. We'll call this gen. And now I want the next step here to be gen. Okay, and now I'm going to add a show answer. I'm just going to output the answer. Output. Okay, and that was an answer. Okay, and we'll do that. The next step here will be show answer. Please move. Sorry. Let's go first. Let me just move it here, but I will also. You didn't really come here to see me, so I'm just going to switch off the video. Okay, so question answer. Okay, so now we're showing the answer, but then I want to go back and ask more questions, right? So the next step here is ask Q. Okay, so my workflow here is an infinite workflow now, never ends. So I'm going to ask a question, generate the answer, show that, and then ask another question. Should we see? Okay, let's do this. Because I don't want to bore you for too long here. Where was the? Oh, I lost it, but let's just get it back. Okay. I think this is happening, and this is a preview thing. Yeah. I need to fix that. Okay. Right. So I'm going to demonstrate to you that this has some persistence. Hello, my name is Tom. What is your name? See if this works. Hello, Tom. I'm a virtual assistant here to help you. How can I assist you today? Okay, so now I'm back to chatting. So I want to prove that it remembers my name because it has this persistence. I put this chat history in. So I say, what did I say my name was? Let's hope this works. You mentioned earlier that your name is Tom. So this is generated by the LLM, right? So that means that it remembers my history. I'm just not just sending each question to the LLM. I'm sending the entire history of the chat because of this chat history variable that I filled in. Okay. So there we go. This is a little chatbot interface. I will I will make this look better. There'll be some styling options, I think. I sort of tried to do that, but it was a little bit too hard. And we'll do better feedback. Right now, you know, if you press this, it's blank for a while. I'll see if we can get the typing coming in, but that might come later. But so here you go. This is a little ChatGPT, right? Actually, It's pretty capable, right? So it's as capable as the model you've chosen to back it against. Now, but what if I didn't just have these 3 steps, right? What if I had stuff in between? What if I made some decisions? What I tried to retrieve some information? And this is essentially, where the RAG algorithm becomes the simplest thing. So let me show you how it would work with the RAG. So here I don't have the loop here, but this is a different application, or this is just my test application that has all sorts of stuff. But I was testing the RAG step. These are useless. Let's delete those. So here I'm using some more steps here, right? So first I'm going to ask a question. Then my next step will be to retrieve a bunch of documents coming from some field in some table, and based on a search term, which comes from the context. It's a JavaScript expression. And then I want a certain number of documents, and I want those results to go into a variable in the context. Here I call it docs. And then I want to generate, but now the prompt here is, I say, based on these documents, and here I get the documents and I get the actual text. So this is the field in the table, and I put them together, answer this question, and then the question from the user. And then it will put the answer. Here I didn't use the chat history, I didn't do the loop, but I put the variable here in this thing that I called and. It was meant to be ants, but I put ants for some reason, got an extra D. And then I'm showing that output, right? So this is a very primitive RAG system. And so now the idea is that you can now do do things that are more complicated, that get information that from different sources, right? That's up to you how you build these steps, right? And put it together in this LLM generate, right? So we have some other, this was the retrieval stuff. I need to do an extraction step and stuff like that. So lots of stuff is happening with this. And so these steps will be sort of like the way you build an AI agent in Saltcorn. Or, you don't have to do AI. You can use workflows, you can do stuff. Yeah. Roderick, do those documents need to be in a publicly accessible path, or are you posting them to the OpenAI API? Okay, those documents are actually in your database. So in this application, it's a big mess. I have everything. That with vec I picked is those documents are here. That step, that vector similarity search, will search through a database table where you have a vector field. This is how the RAG algorithm works, right? You're looking for, you take your question from the user, you encode it into a vector, and then you're searching for documents that have a similar vector using a vector similarity search. A very simple algorithm, but it's kind of cool. And then it finds the documents in this table that have the nearest vector to your question. It gets, so it gets that whole document, including this text field, which is the body of the document. So in answer to your question, I think there are 2 questions there. The documents need to be in your database, including the content. Now, we have a plugin to help with that called Dockling. So this, I can't remember how this works, but I wrote some documentation, I guess. Yeah, that's right. So we have a dockling to markdown action. So that helps you to convert. That essentially helps you to build that table. Where is it? This is the different application. That will help you, if you have some files that have PDFs or Word documents or anything like that. I think they do Excel as well. Then that dockling module with its action, dockling to markdown, will help you convert that file into a markdown string. and then you need to insert it into this table. You could also do that with a workflow. Right? So that's typically the way these RAG systems work, is that you have a database that have all the documents in them. Now, the second question you asked is, are you posting them to the OpenAI API? Yes, you will be posting them to some API, but it doesn't have to be the OpenAI API. This large language model, I'm not going to, unfortunately, I'm not going to show you the settings because I haven't hidden the API OpenAI key. But when you go into the configuration of the large language model, sorry, here it's this local, it'll look more, it looks more, this is what it will look like, right? So this large language model module, when you go into that, you have the choice between a OpenAI itself, an OpenAI compatible API. So that's one that you can run yourself, or you can use one of the many hosted ones. Like I guess Grok has one, and we haven't done the Claude Anthropic one. I don't know if they're OpenAI compatible, but there are lots and lots of projects that are OpenAI compatible API servers, and you can run them yourself. There's one called Tabby API, and then the last option is Ollama. Ollama is a really nice. It's not the fastest way, but it's a really nice way to get started. So this is a project that's quite it's super simple. It's in lots of Linux projects, and you basically just install it, run it, and it takes care of downloading the models for you, serving the models, and then in Saltcorn you'll just choose Ollama, that you're running Ollama on this computer, and that will give you access to lots of open source models. So lots of people are concerned about this in terms of privacy. Okay, great. I guess that's it. So that's like a preview of the workflows. I don't really, if anyone has any questions, you have to be quick because otherwise I'm about to drop off. And it's the end of the week. It's been a long couple of weeks. I've actually been working pretty hard, and I have Christmas coming up, so we're going away. So this is the end of the year, I guess. I'm going to be away for all of Christmas and New Year's as well. We're going to Finland. So we will resume office hours. We will resume Saltcorn development in the new year. Maybe I'll get it to do a little bit between Christmas and New Year's. Thanks, Mike. Happy Christmas, you too. Best wishes to everyone here. And I'll see you in the new year. We have Bill Pearson here, who is the person who taught me everything I know about workflows. So thanks, Bill, for coming. And it was a great lunch we had today. So thank you, everyone, and hope to see you in the new year.